control. But what we then have done is we revised this target, taking into consideration the reality of the environment at the moment. So we have revised the target, and Q3 and Q4 will therefore show a performance that is significantly better than this. On to page 41, we had committed to finalizing the scoping of training needs and producing a report to this effect. This is the scoping of training needs of communities around our national parks, particularly in the mega living landscape, our target being 1. We have not been able to finish this particular report, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that the foundational gaps that we identified when we did our literature review or desktop-based scoping, we understood, and it became apparent that we need a closer collaboration with municipalities, because these are communities that are not only just on the vicinity of our park borders, but because we speak in terms of mega landscapes, it's a little bit further into areas that we do not typically operate in. So we are trying very hard to make sure that we meet that target, because skills development is so critical for our communities in terms of just breaking that cycle of poverty. Slide 50, resource mobilization. We have been limping a bit around resource mobilization for a number of reasons. We have a capacity issue in that department that we have since managed. We have appointed a very senior person to lead resource mobilization that will assist us. But as well, there were other targets that were for Q1 and Q2 that were delayed by signatures with regards to agreements with donors and funders. We have managed that situation, and in Q3 we have a better showing than we showed in Q2. I'd like to go to page 59. Page 59, Q3, we have recovered. We have met our target for both Q1 and Q2. This was a slight supply chain management delay, so it was a procurement delay. One of the reasons being that we did issue an RFQ in good time, but we did not receive responses from the market. So that was one of the complications we've had. We re-advertised, and we have now appointed the right service provider. I'll then go to 64, page 64, which relates to the creation of climate smart and eco-friendly facilities. We had missed our target in Q1, and I'm pleased to indicate that by Q2 we had caught up. And through you, Honorable Chair, at this juncture, I would like to hand over to Ms. Ketchiwe Sulubane to take us through the finances. She will also just share one slide so that we can get to the question and answer stage. Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Chair, through you.
Thank you, Ms. Ketchiwe. Over to you.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. Good morning to our Minister and our Deputy Ministers, our DG of the entities, and all other representatives of the different entities. I'll be presenting our financial performance for Q2, Q3. If you could go to slide 66, please. Yes, thank you very much. So in terms of our Q2 performance, in terms of our self-generated revenue, we actually surpassed the target by 11%. When you we've surpassed the budget by 11%. And the main driver of the surpass was or is conservation fees, which we exceeded target by 10%, as well as concession fees, which we exceeded target by 22%. Our biggest contributor in that space is accommodation and sales. And in that space, we exceeded our targeted budget by 26%. And in terms of our revenue from non-exchange transactions, which would be our grants and donations, in that space, we're not doing good. In terms of our overall, we actually lagged behind by 30% when you compare it to budget. And the main drivers of that performance is the grants, especially the EPWP grants and the infrastructure grants. And the presentation details exactly why there are reasons, as well as the mitigating or the correcting factors as well. In terms of our expenditure to date, we realized a savings of 10% in Q2, and the main
We've lost you, Saskatchewan. Is it me, members?
No,
Who
Chairperson,
can't
I can't
hear?
hear anything.
Oh, okay.
main drive also realized the savings in
Saskatchewan,
operating costs. Yes, Chair.
we've lost you for a few minutes, but you can continue.
Okay, sorry, Chair. I'm not sure where, but I'll just recap in terms of our total expenditure. We realized the savings of 10% in that space, and we have three key main drivers that drove the performance. And the first one was human resource cost, which is uh, um, uh, our biggest contributor in total expenditure, which we've saved 1% in Q2. In terms of the other two, we have maintenance cost as well as operating cost. With maintenance cost, the reason of the saving is just the delay in our implementation of our infrastructure plans, which we have picked up in Q3, as well as our operating cost, which as well we've picked up in Q3. And then I will go, okay. So as a result, we realized, or the entity realized, a net surplus of 191 million for Q2. In terms of our interim financial or our financial position for Q2, which is in slide 74. Yes, thank you. In terms of our financial position, in terms of our balance sheet, we are an asset-heavy entity. We rely on infrastructure to drive our operations. Our net asset value at the end of Q2 was 3.8 billion. And furthermore, the entity reflected a significant cash balance of 2.5 billion, of which 82% of that 2.5 billion covers our current liabilities, while 18% is reinvested back in our capital commitments. Our liquidity and solvency ratios are very healthy. As an organization, we are able to cover our long-term and short-term commitments. In terms of our audit finding, so this is slide 79. Okay, thank you. In terms of our audit finding, we had three key findings. that the Auditor General made. And the first finding was the effective and appropriate steps were not taken to collect all revenue. That finding we are in progress and outlined also in the next pages in terms of progress of where we are. In terms of the second finding, which is the investigations of alleged financial misconduct, we have already completed all our we've implemented all our action plans as at Q2. And then in terms of irregular expenditure, which is the last finding, we implemented two-phased approach. The first phase was the compliance and governance, which we have implemented in terms of the action plans that we put in place. The second phase that we are currently in progress with is the digital transformation, where we are in the process of automating the procurement process to make sure that we are effective and efficient in that space. Chair, I'm done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Ketiwa. Honorable members, I think Sandbags is done with the presentation. I am now going to note hands. I already see the hand of Honorable De Block, followed by Honorable Mkize, Honorable Managa. I'm taking hands, honorable members, for questions, clarity-seeking questions. For now, I see 3 hands. If there is someone who is unable to raise their hand, can you indicate also by writing on the chat box? Over to you, Honorable De
Chairperson.
Block. Yes.
Chairperson,
Yes.
it's not my hand.
Oh, okay. Honorable
I didn't allow
Pilankulu,
me
you
to
are the
raise my
fourth
hand.
one. Yes, okay.
Okay.
Noted, Honorable Pilankulu. Honorable
Chairperson,
De Block. Okay.
Also, welcome to the new minister. We are very much looking forward to working with you, and it seems to us that you've made a flying start under very difficult circumstances. So thank you, Minister, for your work so far. And like I said, we look forward to working with you. Chairperson, if you'll allow just 2 quick comments before I ask my question. I would like to congratulate Sandparks and the Kruger Park Management on the disaster management. I think it's incredible that an evacuation of so many hundreds of people at such a remote location and at such scale took place with no deaths or even injuries. I do think we need to applaud that effort. It is really an incredible effort. So well done to the leadership. And Chairperson, I'd like to put a motion that our committee puts out a public statement calling for the public to support the Kruger Recovery Fund. I think it would be a wonderful gesture of support from us as a committee to support this initiative to rebuild the Kruger Park, which is our most valuable national natural asset in South Africa. So with those comments out the way, I'd like to then address Sandparks and congratulate them on their Q1 and Q2 performance. It's very heartening to see that underperformances and audit findings are being proactively addressed. I just have one question, Chair, about the translocation of game to communities. I note that this will be amended in Q3 and Q4, but my question relates to what happened in Q1 and Q2. The CE mentioned that one of the difficulties was acquiring veterinary permits to move animals. I'd like to know what the concerns were there, or whether this was a a disease-related reason that these animals couldn't be translocated, or if it was a failure on the veterinary services side. Just what were the details there, and why were those animals not able to be permitted to be donated to communities? And then related to veterinary issues, Chair, I'd like to know, with the foot and mouth disease outbreak being in the media at the moment, how Sandbox is going to work with the Department of Agriculture in terms of our response to this outbreak, and are they collaborating with that department to make sure that our wildlife, which also carry foot and mouth disease, are effectively separated from livestock, and whether there's a vaccination plan for these animals as part of the national rollout. Just some words on that from Sandbox would be very appreciated by myself. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Duplo. Can you do me a favor, Honorable Chow? Can you cut that beard of yours, please? On the light. Okay.
My girlfriend likes it, Chair, so I think I might keep it.
Oh, okay, okay. No, it's fine.
Happy
Honorable
wife, happy life.
If it was me, you were gonna say I'm out of order. So no,
now,
it's
Honorable
okay.
Manaka, man.
It's okay.
Okay, Honorable Kiza, over to you.
Chairperson, may I just say that I did shave this morning. So,
Oh, I see. I see. Thank you, Minister. Honorable Mkhize.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. With your permission, can I switch off my video, please?
You can switch off, Kabase.
Thank you. Greetings to Chairperson, honorable members, honorable Minister, Deputy Ministers, and everyone present. Would also like to take this opportunity to welcome the presentation from SANParks. I have just only two clarity-seeking questions for SANParks today. I won't travel them with 14 questions. The first one is maintenance cost were 52% below budget, and infrastructure and project cost were 70% below budget in Q2. Was similar underspending observed in Q1 as well? And does SANParks concede that this points to structural weaknesses in planning and procurement than rather inefficiency? The last question is, given the 2.5 billion working capital balance, why does SANParks continue to underspend on critical infrastructure and maintenance that directly affect park safety, biodiversity protection, and tourism readiness? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Kabazela. Honorable Manaka.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chairperson. Let me also join the member who congratulated SANParks on the management of the disaster that we had in January. By the way, I come from Limpopo, about 47 kilos away from the Punda Maria Gate. The response to that disaster, CEO and the whole team, you made us to be proud, because you made sure that the livelihood of the livestock and also the people who were there really was not at stake. Furthermore, SANParks, I would like to applaud you for your excellent revenue performance, which really reflects sound governance, strategic management, and sustainability in the operations that you are having. The balance, Chair, between the effective disaster management and the financial performance, to be honest, is truly noteworthy. And it also sets a positive example for public entities. Coming to the report, sorry. Chair.
Just hold on, Honorable Managa. There is someone who keeps on disturbing us. And if I catch that person, we will remove her from this meeting. Continue, Honorable Manaka, and apologies for that.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chair. So, in relation to the report of the quarter 1 and quarter 2, I want to go to goal number 2, wherein Sunparks committed to sustainable and inclusive economic growth through a biodiversity-driven economy. They did report that their performance improved from 75% in quarter 1 and then to 89% in quarter 2. I just want to check with the CEO and the entire management team. What concrete policy and budgetary interventions led to this improvement? And CEO, to what extent have these gains resulted in measurable outcomes, such as job creation, procurement from local and Black-owned enterprises, and improved livelihoods for communities living adjacent to the national parks? Which mechanisms are in place to prevent this improvement from being a compliance-driven paper exercise? And how will you ensure sustained performance and equitable community beneficiation going forward? Thank you so much, Honorable Chair. Thank you, bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Manaka. Honorable Mokwena.
It's not me.
Oh, sorry. Come again. Oh, Honorable Pilangulu. I'm sorry, Ma'am Mokwena. Honorable Pilangulu. Ma'am Mokwena will
Yes.
follow Honorable Pilangulu.
No, thank you. Yeah, in my gadget.
We can hear you, Honorable Pilangulu. We can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairperson, and good morning, everyone in the platform. I also like to welcome Honorable Minister, Chairperson. I've got few questions, but before I raise my question, I just want to let the portfolio committee members that I'm on oversight. So sometimes if I get lost, it will be because of the places or the area that one will be passing through. For apology for that. I also want to congratulate Sunpark on the good work that they did. Chairperson, my first question goes like this. How does Sunpark ensure the quality and sustainability of EPWP jobs? And also, how will Sunpark mitigate veterinary permits impact on animal delivery to communities? And what will be the plans and the timelines for the community tourism product partnership? The steps that are being taken by Sunpark to ensure strategic partners adhere to reporting requirements. And lastly, Chair, what are the timelines for implementing the ERP system and contract management tool to prevent irregular expenditure? I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Pilangulu. Honorable Mokwena.
Thank you very much, Chair. And let me take this opportunity and welcome the presentation by Sunpark and congratulate them for the great performance on both quarter 1 and quarter 2. However, I do have several questions. And then I just want to check what are the 2 significant cultural heritage products that have been developed for the MLs, and in what ways will they showcase our tangible and intangible cultural heritage to visitors? What component of the recruitment process was being challenged by the local forums? And what long-term solutions are in place to ensure that stakeholders' engagement does not impact or delay set recruitment timelines? Noting that the national target of EPWP is approximately 5 million, what is the target for the department? Furthermore, What is the overall target and role that will be played by the entity to meet this target? And also noting that stringent veterinary permit conditions required for the capture and translocation of animals were a challenge in both Q1 and Q2. How will the repackage wildlife economy program address this issue and enable this process to be smoother and more viable? And why was there no target for employees participating in skills development programs in Q1? I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mam Kwena. I do not see any other hand. From my side, I think I have been covered by the most questions that were raised by members, but mine will be just one on the vacancy rate at Sandparks. We see that it increased from 11.95% to 14.83% during the period under review. But I just want to check, out of these vacancies, how many of these vacancies are rangers, and when are they going to be filled? On the issue of the donation of wildlife, I've been covered by the members, because I also wanted to check how does Sandparks plan to catch up on this missed target. I'm going to hand over to you, CE, so that you can respond.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, honorable members, as well. We accept the support and congratulatory messages with grace. The Kruger National Park is an interesting place because that's where we have very ready, able, and competent people on the ground who are trained to be disaster ready. And one cannot just take the honor by themselves, but to really just acknowledge that we have an amazing, powerful team on the ground, led by the managing executive, Mr. Oscar Mtuk. So we accept that those congratulations with grace. Chairperson, through you, I'm going to request a colleague of mine to tackle a question that I think that has come through 3 or 4 times. So I'd like to put that one to bed, and then we will tackle the other ones. And this is to do with the veterinary permits and the issue of the game donations. I'm going to request Dr. Howard Hendricks to speak to that, and while he's at it, to also address the matter of foot and mouth disease that was asked, I believe, by Honorable de Block. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Howard? Is it Dr. Hendricks, no? Howard Hendricks?
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, honourable members. I'll also say good morning to the Minister and the Deputy Ministers and the DGs. I'll also say good morning to the board chairs, as well as to colleagues within colleagues as well. Chair, yes, indeed, those are good questions that I would like to briefly engage on. In terms of the veterinary permit conditions, the delay is partly on Sandparks as well as onto the recipients that will receive these animals. In terms of the part, there are several components. One is obviously it all relates to the control measures to prevent the spread of controlled animal diseases. Everything relates to that. On the part of Sandparks, we all our animals are subject to foot and mouth protocol quarantine. For example, Mokala, we've only been able to release 11 buffalo after they have been into quarantine for 3 months. What happens is that you're required to keep them in quarantine for 1 month. They go through skin testing for TB. And then if there are any signs of what we call false positives, they go through another month of quarantine, and all of this has to be done under the supervision of a state vet. So that obviously limits our ability to deliver on some of these animals. On the part of the beneficiaries, one, it's when they're not able to secure their movement permit requirements from the different state vet offices. So their readiness then delays us to move those animals. So while Sandparks can obtain its import and movement translocation permits, it also is incumbent of the recipients to have their permits in place as well. And then I think probably just last to say that it all requires vaccine control. So if we do move animals, we need to give assurance that there are vaccine certificates associated with those animals being translocated, and obviously all the documentation that comes with it. So in terms of Honourable Block and Honourable Balankulu, as well as Honourable Mokoena, and Chair, your own question. So how do we mitigate? You know, we've now seen this unfold. So towards the end of last year, Sandpark then consolidated all what we call the biosecurity considerations and the potential impact on the operations of Sandparks. We then consolidated all of those concerns into one across all our national parks. And our intent now is to work through, to bring this to the attention of the department, and then to work through, there is a memorandum of understanding between the department and the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, to bring it to that platform so that we can then have a discussion around, you know, wildlife translocations, the research component, the disease component, and obviously the community facing conservation. We call it conservation management program. And just to highlight, you know, some of the issues that came up were regulatory uncertainty and inspection requirements. All sites needs to be inspected. We also talk about quarantine measures and wildlife translocation constraints. We talk about disease prevention and control approaches. We talk about human-wildlife conflict and damage-causing animals, and then game meat production and food safety security. And then the last one was just use and regulation of agricultural poisons, which obviously links to snaring. So we have consolidated these biosecurity issues that we will now obviously find the appropriate platform and time to engage as a way of mitigating some of the issues that we're experiencing that affects the operations. And Chair, just lastly to indicate in terms of the wildlife economy program, we're able to fast track this program as from the 1st of April. We've completed our advertisements calling for further donations. We obviously take that through our appropriate governance processes within Sandparks before we will then start delivering those animals from 1st of April. So we hope that by then we would have dealt with some of these veterinary permit conditions, as well as being able to ensure that we deliver animals. Just to indicate, the closing date was the 31st of January, and we received several applications for wildlife donations. Chair, I hope I've addressed that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Hendricks. CE, over to you. Ms. Silo, over to you.
Thank you. I'd like to start, I will not necessarily go in sequence, Chair, if you'll allow me. So, Honorable Chair, the issue about the vacancies and how many of them are rangers, may I humbly request that we respond to that in writing? One doesn't necessarily have the statistics in front of my my eyes. So if we can put that in writing, I'd appreciate it. With regards to the question from Honorable Mugwena regarding the skills development program and not having targets on that, this is a new indicator for us. But typically what we do is that we provide to CATSETA I think it's called a workforce skills development program that we submit in the first quarter of the financial year. So that is what we'll be doing in the first, or rather, that's what we did in the first quarter of the financial year, hence no target because it's a timing issue. And then after the CATSETA has approved the funding, we then are able to begin to implement from quarter two to quarter four. So that is simply just, it doesn't have a target because it's a timing issue. Also, under EPWP, Honorable Mugwena asked a question about our contribution. I hope I understood the question, but our contribution to the targets for DFFE. Honorable Mugwena, we in the past years contributed 36% to the DFFE targets. And as much as I'm open to correction, my understanding is that due to additional expenditure by the department on EPWP, our contribution will slip to 9%. So it's a percentage slip, not so much a question of less dedication to the EPW program. But that is my understanding, and it is open to correction. But more or less, we are looking at a 9% contribution to overall DFFE targets. But I cannot answer the question offhand about what the targets for the DFFE are. We can also respond in writing, or perhaps here on the platform, my colleagues can deal with, and my colleagues from DFFE can deal with the matter. There have been two questions around the recruitment with regards to EPWP jobs. And this is directly linked to our inability to reach a particular target regarding the commencement of work for EPWP. Honorables, what has happened is that in this financial year, we introduced a new vetting system for EPWP, that it was a minimum of matric, and some of the SMMEs, some of the individuals who lead those SMMEs were not able to fulfill that. Not necessarily because they may not have had the matric, but they simply did not have averted certificates. We then met with people and parks, amongst other entities, to engage on these issues about the minimum qualifications for SMMEs participating in the EPWP program. And we successfully got to an agreement that these minimum qualifications are critical in terms of assurance of the quality of the work that is provided. So it was an amicable solution that we got to. I must indicate as well that we engaged the South African National Civic Organization in this instance. Then there was a question about the quality. So that speaks to the quality of the EPW jobs that Honorable Bilankulu had made mention of. Honorable Mananga had asked about how we avoid just being compliance driven in terms of our targets around growth and sustainable, or rather sustainable growth and biodiversity economy, job creation and livelihoods. And just to indicate that as sandparks, our social legitimacy and social license goals are very critical and are pivotal to how we approach conservation for the future. We're intentional and we're inclusivity driven, not because we're just creating platitudes, but essentially we understand that when we operate within an environment where we do not have benefit sharing with our closest neighbors, which is the communities, our efforts at conservation will be threatened. And the loss of social legitimacy is something that we flag as a very key threat. And therefore, we have to ensure that our strategies drive, if not our hearts, let it be our strategies then, that ensures not just about targets, but an understanding that a failure to meet our obligations in this instance will threaten the entire conservation efforts that we're mandated to deliver. In terms of cultural heritage, Honorable Mukwena, let me just touch on that very quickly. There are two monuments. One is Chief Chungwa in Ado, just outside Ado National Park in the Eastern Cape. We will write a short description of who Chief Chungwa was, but he was a leader of Xhosa and San communities in the area of what we now call the Eastern Cape, and a battle hero of sorts for those communities. It is a very interesting history that we're only too pleased to share with you. We're also pleased to announce that we will be launching that particular cultural heritage icon, which is the gravesite of Chief Chingwa, in April of this year. The dates I may not exactly have in my mind, but we are launching it in April. You will recall from previous reports from the last financial year, we were reporting on the building of that particular gravesite. Then we have another heritage project in the Kruger National Park, which is Chief Shiloah. So the Shiloah people existed in that area back in the Iron Age. Also a very rich history connected to the Tulamela history, which in itself is connected to the Mapungubwe history, as well as the history of the Great Zimbabwe. So our cultural heritage experts in sandparks have been able to connect these communities that over centuries scattered. But in the instance of the Shiloah heritage site, we actually have remnants of the buildings, as well as artifacts that archaeologists have found. We are currently storing those artifacts at Tulamela, which is also on the north. So the Shiloah monument is along the border of Mozambique and South Africa. Very rich history as well there. And in writing, we will include a paragraph just to give the significance of both of these sites that we have been working on. And then, Honorable Mkhize, I wouldn't say that The underspending is conceding to weak points in our supply chain management or poor planning. Critical infrastructure is the backbone of SANPARKS. We are, I think Ms. Shulubani spoke about us being an asset-driven entity. We are asset-driven, so infrastructure is top of mind. Infrastructure allows us the ability to generate tourism revenue. It also gives us the ability to access various parts of our parks for conservation objectives, such that Honorable Mkize, with Kruger being hit by floods, first priority, of course, was human lives. And once we had ticked that box, we then had to contend with the destruction to infrastructure and what its impact is on our ability to execute both our tourism and conservation functions. I give you this background to say that we don't take spending in infrastructure and maintenance lightly. We have invested greatly in maintenance and infrastructure over the last 2 years, and that speaks for itself. However, you will recall as well, honorables, that there was a time the auditors had identified issues to do with irregular expenditure and issues to do with other governance difficulties around procurement. We then have tightened, and I reported this, I believe, a few quarters away. We've really tightened our governance processes around supply chain, and we've introduced multiple layers with regards to filtering and vetting both the process, our own internal processes, as well as the suppliers that are lined up for award. This then results in identifying shortcomings, as I said, both in the process and with the, in some instances, the suppliers and the proposals they make to us. That then leads to a slowdown in the procurement process. So that is one of the things that has really impacted on our expenditure, on maintenance costs. However, we really have significantly caught up, I must just assure you, honorables, in Q3. We will present a very different picture. We have a panel of contractors on the ground in Kruger National Park. And we are also in the process of augmenting that particular panel so that work is done speedily. And this is just that was the routine maintenance work. Now with the disaster that we're facing, we're also working at expediting processes with regards to bringing additional contractors to assist us with the recovery of Kruger. But really to assure you that we do not take infrastructure issues lightly. There was a question as well, if I recall, it was from Honorable Bilangulu with regards to the ERP and contract management system. Our ERP tender is at almost completion stage in terms of evaluation. I have been assured that by the end of Q4, we will have made an award. Because there was a delay with our ERP, we have now, in parallel to going through the tender process for the ERP, we have developed an SCM management system internally. It's just a prototype that we are rolling out early in the next financial year. However, we've also, just from a manual point of view, introduced various checks and balances within our SCM and finance department, including early warning systems, to ensure that we never fall into the trap of procuring against expired contracts. With regards to, I think it was the tourism community partnerships, also a question from Honorable Bilankulu. We're currently developing the framework, that is the target for this financial year, of creating these partnerships with community-led tourism products. And we will be done by the end of this financial year. We'll be ready to roll out next year on these partnerships. I must say that these are not sequential steps. They do appear sequentially. However, already on the ground, we have our officials from the Socio-Economic Transformation Department that have already identified potential partners in communities that we will get into partnership with to provide those community-led tourism products. Chairperson, if I've missed anything, you will correct me. I will end there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Silo. I see the hand of Minister has been up for quite some time, but I did not want to cut you, Ms. Silo. Minister?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I just thank you for all the responses. There are just two things that I quickly want to respond on myself. Firstly, the call from Honorable De Block for the support to the Kruger Recovery Fund. I would really appreciate that. I have had discussions with numerous organizations out there that are willing to contribute towards that. I can just tell the committee that Sandparks have appointed 3 independent auditing firms, that all 3 of them are of the top 5 auditing companies in the country, to assist with the management of this fund to ensure that money will be spent correctly. So I would like to have the support of this committee as well. Secondly, with regards to foot and mouth disease, I've had discussions with the Minister of Agriculture. As we all know, that buffalo are carriers of the foot and mouth disease, but they do not get sick from it, unlike cattle. So there are a number of things that we will have to do in the future. We will never be without buffalo in this country, so the risk of foot and mouth disease will always be there. What we'll have to do in the future to get to FMD free status again is to ensure that we've got buffer zones, proper maintained buffer zones around Kruger and other places where we have got buffalo. Now, in Kruger National Park, on my first briefing that they gave me, the western boundary of the Kruger National Park needs to be redone. Over many years, it's been neglected or it's been broken, and due to funding, it wasn't repaired. Now, that is in excess of 300 kilometers of fencing that needs to come up at an estimate of roughly 1 million rand per kilometer. So it's going to become a huge cost. I am going to push with interdepartmental conversations that we can try and see whether we can get funding, due to the fact that this has now been declared as a disaster. If we want to succeed in the long run with our fight against foot and mouth disease, we will have to look at issues like that. But I just wanted to let the committee know that I am in discussions with the Minister of Agriculture, and I have pledged the support of the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment on every single possible way in which we can assist in alleviating the problems. And when you look at the Kruger National Park and the bordering communities, it is especially our subsistence farmers and small farmers that are being affected by this. And for them to lose a certain amount of head of cattle is devastating. So we've got to try and work on that. Chairperson, that is just what I quickly wanted to respond to. If you would excuse me, I've got both the deputy ministers and the DG with me here for a meeting that we've got to continue with right now. So if you would excuse me, I would appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Minister. You are excused, and the deputy ministers as well. Thank you very much for your inputs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Honorable members, I do not see any hands for follow-ups. Thank you very much, Sandparks, with your presentation. But however, I want to give you a as you have requested that on my question, you would like to respond in writing, I'm going to give you 22nd of February to respond to my question on the issue of vacancies and also, the number of rangers that are employed. Thank you very much. You are released. Thank you to the board chairperson, CE, and your team. Thank you for your presentation and also for the responses. Thank you. You may leave the platform.
Thank you, Honorable.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Members, looking at my agenda, we are now going to move to South African Weather Services. I am going to give the board chairperson of SOurce to do the overview remarks, and then after that followed by the CEO. Just want to over to you, Ms. Dyer.
Good morning, Chairperson, Committee Chairperson, to all the honourable members, honourable Minister, Deputy Ministers, and DG in absentia, SOurce CEO and acting CFO, SOurce executives, officials of the department, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is once again an honour for me to address the committee on behalf of the board of the South African Weather Service ahead of the tabling of the entity's performance reports for the first and second quarters of the 2025-26 financial year. As the committee is aware, the board is entrusted with providing strategic oversight, approving the strategic plan and annual performance plans, monitoring implementation against approved targets, and holding the SOurce executive accountable for performance, financial sustainability, and good governance in line with Parliament's expectations and legislative oversight role. It is against this background that I offer the board's reflections on the last 2 quarters under review. The 2025-26 financial year marks the first year of the SOurce 5-year strategic plan for the period 2025 to 2030. The board approved the strategy, mindful of the increasing demands placed on the organization by climate variability and extreme weather events, aviation and maritime safety requirements, and the growing expectation that the SOurce data and services support national development and disaster risk reduction. This strategy is aligned to national priorities relating to disaster risk reduction, climate resilience, and the protection of key economic sectors. The APP translates this long-term vision into 13 measurable targets for the year. Without repeating a lot of what the Minister had mentioned earlier, the performance in the first quarter, with only 7 of 13 targets achieved, was well below the level expected by the board. Importantly, the board noted with concern that some of the unmet targets were within SOurce's core mandate, which includes data availability in critical climate and greenhouse gas domains, while the board was on the entity's performance. Financial sustainability is another serious concern for the board. It directly affects SOurce's ability to maintain critical infrastructure, retain specialized skills, and deliver reliable services to the public and key economic sectors. The board is therefore encouraging actively with management to explore options that can place the organization on a more stable footing over the medium term. This includes engagements with the shareholder and broader government ecosystem where appropriate. Beyond performance and finances, the board continues to focus on governance fundamentals. These include compliance with legislative and regulatory frameworks, the effectiveness of internal controls, ethical leadership, and the functioning of assurance structures. We are satisfied that these governance foundations remain intact, and we also recognize that sustained performance improvement requires continuous strengthening of these systems. As I conclude, Chairperson, the board is optimistic. The initial underperformance in the first quarter, followed by improvement in the second, provides impetus for the next 2 quarters to ensure that valuable lessons learned inform the remainder of the year. The board will continue to exercise robust oversight, support management where appropriate, and ensure that SAWS delivers on its mandate in the public interest and in service of South Africa's safety and development needs. On behalf of the board, I wish to thank the committee for its continued oversight and engagement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dyer. You can switch off your video. We've seen your beautiful face. Thank you. I'm now going to hand over to the CEO of South African Weather Services, Mr. Isham Abada. Over to you, Mr. Abada.
Good morning, Honorable Chair. Good morning, Honorable Members. I'd like to also greet the Honorable Minister and Deputy Ministers, the DG, the Sandparks Board Chairperson and CEO in absentia, and then also my source colleagues that are on the platform, our colleagues from the department and also from Parliament. And ladies and gentlemen, good morning once again. Chair, if it's okay with you, I'd like to switch my camera off just to improve my reception. And before I start, Chair, the beard will have to stay because just like Honorable De Block, my wife likes it, Chair. So
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, noted.
Okay. Chair, I'd like to, as per your previous instruction, jump right into it and then tackle the areas, especially in the first quarter, that we didn't achieve. So I'm going to ask that we move to slide 5 immediately, please. I'll take the presentation as read. Thank you. I'm not seeing this very well, so I'm going to open it up on my side as well, Chair. Thank you. So, Chair, the first target that we didn't achieve was on Program 1 in the first quarter, and that basically was in relation to our national weather bulletins. Our target there is 98%. We only achieved 96%. We had a problem with the transmission that affected that 2% drop there. And essentially what we're looking at in terms of corrective measures was to ensure that we improve the delivery of the products for immediate implementation and looked at alternative dissemination means. Then, Chair, under our percentage on slide 6, under our percentage of availability of climate data on the National Climate Database, there our target was 90%. We missed it, unfortunately, by 7%. There was inconsistent and inefficient replication of regional data to the central database. And I know, Chair, the committee mentioned that we shouldn't mention too much about the cyber attack, but it was one of the effects of the cyber attack, and obviously we put in as corrective measures quality control at the regional level to ensure that our collected data is properly validated. And then also we've been working very hard to ensure that we have replication to the main database on a daily basis. The next slide is slide 7. This was the percentage availability of greenhouse gases. This one we missed by quite a big margin. It was 85% as a target, and we only achieved 60%. Chair, we had a problem here with the capturing of the indicator description, and it affected the method of calculation. And in terms of that, our Gore ozone program was also constrained because we had a depleted ozone son stock. And then one of our, or rather two of our machines, the Dobson spectrophotometers, took part in an intercomparison in terms of the intercomparison campaign of the regional brewer calibration. So we in terms of the corrective measures there, we indicated that the indicated description will be corrected so that we can reflect the correct method of calculation. And we'll then apply this methodology for the rest of the year. So we'll also recalculate the Q1 performance at the end of 2025-26 to look at the state of the performance against the revised method of calculation. The equipment has been returned, and also our ozone stock has been replenished. Chair, then the next slide I want to go to is slide 9, because that gives us a sense of the achievements of Program 1. In the first quarter, we achieved 57.14% and did not achieve 42% for that program. Chair, as far as Program 2 and 3 went, there were no significant issues, so I'll go then for my next slide to slide 18. In terms of our non-achievement there, this one related to the unregulated commercial revenue. Our target there was 7.6 million. We only achieved 7.02 million. And then once again, some of the residual impact from the cybersecurity incident. We did establish the feeds or re-establish feeds with our partners. And then also many of our critical client and partner facing systems had to be rebuilt from scratch. And some of them still remain under restoration, but I must say that we've managed to improve that situation, and I'll show you just now how we've done that. In terms of how we corrected this, we had to finalize the review of the commercial strategy, which we did. And also the action plan for 2025 and 26 that talks to our revenue and revenue generation. We started implementation of the action plan, which includes prioritization and implementation also of our revenue turnaround strategy. Then slide 19. This was the BEE level. Our target was level 4. In the first quarter, we had achieved a level 6 rating, and we also then looked at how to correct this. There were a few areas that we had a decline in, and that was specifically enterprise supplier development scores, which dropped a little bit, and then also brought our overall score down by almost 14 points. We then decided that we'll benchmark with our Schedule 3A entities so that we can create a BEE strategy that will improve the situation and ensure that we get back to our target or better. A lot of our, I must mention also, Chair, that a lot of our procurement is at an international level because we don't really have the suppliers with the wherewithal for some of our equipment that requirements locally. So that also impacts a bit on our BEE level. The next slide is slide 20. This one was our target was to reach 750,000 people in vulnerable areas. We had a problem in terms of the finalization of the budget and procurement issues that didn't allow us to meet the target there. We then decided that we'll execute the Q1 and Q2 targets to ensure that we, by Q2, achieve that target. Under this program, Chair, which is Program 4, we didn't achieve 75% of the targets and only achieved 25%. Then, Chair, I want to move then from slide 21. I'll leave the slides 22 to 27 to the CFO when he presents them. I'd like to go then to slide 29. Thank you. Chair, this is just a summary of all that I was talking about previously. We had 13 targets in total. In the first quarter, we only achieved 7 of those targets, which translates to 53.85%. And as mentioned by the Minister and the Board Chair, that was not adequate. And we have subsequently improved on that, on those numbers. So I'd like to take the committee to slide 30 then, the next slide. Slide 30. Sorry, Chair, mine doesn't seem to be according with. Can you go to the summary of the second quarter performance, please, Dituso? Not the programs, just the overall. Yes, there we go. One before that. Slide 33. There should be a summary slide, slide 32. The second quarter performance, a summary for the second quarter performance. All right, Chair. Let me continue then from based on what is on the screen before me. We've got, as I indicated, there was a considerable amount of improvement in terms of our programs, respective programs. And if you look at program 1, Chair, there was improvement from the previous percentages. And in terms of program 1, we moved from 87%, we moved to 87%, which is a considerable improvement. As far as program 2, I indicated there were no major issues. You can move to the summary of program 3 as well. Continue. Okay, just go to the ones where we haven't achieved Dituso in terms of the red. Thank you. Program 4. Okay, stop there. Thank you. Chair, in terms of this one, as an area where we haven't achieved, it's once again the commercial, unregulated commercial revenue. Chair, we've had issues, as I said before, in terms of some of our feeds and correcting some of those feeds. As I said, we've also implemented the commercial strategy. And then also we are busy responding, Chair, to two big SOE requests, and that's Eskom and also Department of Water and Sanitation. And we're still busy in negotiation with them, and unfortunately some of those processes are taking longer than anticipated. And we're hoping that as soon as those are finalized, in fact, we just signed a letter to extend the tender period for Eskom yesterday. Once they finalized, that we'll then be able to achieve the targets as they were set. You can move on to the next one, Dituso. Thank you. Dituso, you can move to the next underachievement. Okay, thank you very much. Chair, in terms of program 4, we achieved 66.67% roughly, and 33% wasn't achieved. We will obviously be moving towards improving that situation. Yeah, hopefully in the next quarter or two. And so overall there's been a significant improvement in terms of quarter 4. Chair, I will hand over to the acting CFO, Mr. Mojapelo, take us through the finances for the first and second quarter, Chair. And then we can take some questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abada. Over to you, acting CFO.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thank you, CEO. And good morning, firstly to the Minister, Deputy Ministers, our DG, and all our board chairpersons and colleagues. Thank you so much. If we can just go to slide 23. which is essentially the summary of our statement of financial performance for Q1, which ended in June. So, Chair, our total revenue for the first quarter, we generated 118 million rands worth of revenue against a budget of 149 million, which gave us an underperformance of 30 million or 20%. Now, the biggest contributing factor to this underperformance in our revenue, Chair, is our number one is our conditional grant, which is essentially our capex grant. And as CEO was presenting, you would have heard him say that some of our infrastructure comes from supplies that are based overseas. So that is one of the reasons. And then the other one would be because of the complexity of our infrastructure. Sometimes it takes time just to make sure that our specifications are exactly as we want them, so that we get exactly what we need because of the technicalities involved. So some of that has had an impact in terms of our ability to really push our capital expenditure as we would. And then also, Chair, if you look at our commercial revenue, as has already been mentioned, what we see here is both regulated and non-regulated, where we've generated 44.9 million against a budget of 44.4, which is over budget by 500,000 rands. This is largely due to the regulated commercial revenue sector, which are services that we provide to the airline industry. And then if you look at our total expenditure, Chair, our actual was 132 million against a budget of 139 million, which is an under expenditure of 6.8 million. And most of this, Chair, talks to the cost control measures that we have put in place because of the budget reductions that we have had, especially if you look at our administrative expenditure as well as our operating expenditure, where we've really had to tighten our belts as much as possible to ensure that we try and recoup as much as possible from an expenditure point of view, Chair. And all that, Chair, then gives us a deficit of 37.5 million. But if I could, Chair, just draw your attention to our government grant operational expenditure. If you look at our full year actual for 2024-25, we received 325 million. And for this year, we are expecting 210 million, which is essentially a reduction of about 115 million. Now, that reduction, Chair, really goes a long way in explaining the deficits that we see here. We can just jump to slide 25, which is essentially the summary of our revenue. Yes, so this just gives us a breakdown of what constitutes our revenue, the building blocks of our revenue. And as you can see, Chair, government grant constitutes actual is 56% of our revenue. Then our statutory revenue is 32%, and our non-statutory revenue is only 6%, and then the rest make up the difference. Now, if you see this build-up, Chair, you also really just begin to understand the significance that that 115 million has had on our available resources. We can jump to slide number 27, which is essentially just a summary of our expenditure. Chair, this is just a breakdown of the components of our expenditure according to these three major categories. You will see the biggest contributor to our expenditure is our compensation of employees, which makes up about 56% of our expenditure. And then our operational expenditure makes up 40%, and then our administrative expenditure makes up 3%. Now, Chair, given the nature of the organization in that we are scientifically driven. We obviously employ a lot of intellectual capacity, which then speaks to the expenditure that you see here in terms of compensation of employees. And then, Chair, I would just like to jump over to our financial performance for quarter 2, which is, we can quickly go to slide 50, Chair, which is the summary of our statement of financial performance now for quarter 2. It's on slide 50. But let me just go through it as we try and find the slide here. So in terms of our performance, Chair, for financial performance for quarter 2, our total revenue, we generated 249 million against the budget of 308 million, which is an underperformance of 59 million or 19%. And the biggest contributor to that, Chair, even in quarter 2, was still our conditional grant, which is our capital expenditure. And the performance of our commercial revenue, Chair, here we generated 90 million against a budget of 88 million. And what helped us again here, Chair, was our statutory commercial revenue, because as has already been mentioned in terms of our non-statutory commercial revenue, there we still continue to see underperformance for the reasons that CEO has already mentioned. Now, if you look at our total expenditure, Chair, our total expenditure sits at 260 million, Chair, against a budget of 287 million, which is an under expenditure of 27.7 million, Chair. And here, this is essentially the same message as from quarter 1, where from an expenditure control point of view, we have had to make sure that we save as much as possible. And this under expenditure in our operational and admin expenditure is really a reflection of that. And then just in terms of compensation of employees, that under expenditure there really relates to vacancies that we had that were yet to be filled at this juncture. And then all of that, Chair, gives us a deficit at the end of quarter 2 of 67.99 million, Chair. And then if we can...
Hello?
Let's hold on.
Hello?
There is someone whose mic is on. I want to check who is this person. Can you remove this 0825109698, please? Urgently, can you remove this number? This person is disturbing us. Can the team remove this person? Kilaga, can you remove this 082?
Yes, Chair, I'm removing her.
Please make it fast.
Who is she, Mara? Who is she?
I don't know. She's out of order.
Yeah.
Kilaga, be quick. Okay, thank you.
Done, Chair.
Don't accept that person again, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, acting CFO, can you continue? I think you were almost done.
Yes, yes, thank you, Chair. So just a summary of our revenue, Chair. In terms of our revenue breakdown for quarter 2, once again, Chair, we see that government grant continues to be the biggest contributor of our revenue at 58%. Regulated revenue sits at 32%, non-statutory revenue is 4%, and then the others, which is externally funded projects and other income, makes up the balance, Chair. And then we can just jump to slide 54, which will then be my last slide, Chair, which is summary of our expenditure, just a slide before that. Yes, summary of expenditure. Chair, in terms of the summary of expenditure, the trend remains the same, Chair, in that our biggest contributor continues to be compensation of employees at 57%, and then our operational expenditure at 40%, and then our admin expenditure at 3%, Chair. I will stop there. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mujapelo. Honorable members, that is the presentation from South African Weather Services. I am now going to note hands. Can members who wants to raise some clarity-seeking questions raise their hands? I see the hand of Honorable Manaka, followed by Honorable Mkize. Honorable Mukwena, you are the third one. I guess that Honorable Peters, I see your hand. I think I will note Honorable Bilang as well. Yes, I've noted you. Okay. Thank you. In that order, Honorable, kindly mute Honorable Bilangul. Honorable Managa.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chairperson. We do welcome the presentation by the CEO, by the chairperson of the board, and also by Mr. Mujapelo. Mr. The CEO, I hope I will make the very same mistake I committed last year by saying Mr. Ishmael, Mr. Isham. I hope I corrected. I pronounced it well. Chairperson, I heard Mr. Mojapilu justifying the issue of underspending. I don't think we can attend a meeting wherein the entity can come before us and justify the non-spending. The PFMA, I think, is clear, and Mr. Mojapilu, I'm sure that you have gone through the PFMA. I think we need to come up with I don't know whether it should be a bill or an act or a what, wherein underspending should be punishable. Because when the budget is allocated, it's allocated because there is a need for services to be rendered to our people. Honorable Chairperson, coming to the presentation done by the CEO, under Program 4, Administration, including corporate and regulatory services, SOurce achieved only one target and missed 3 targets in Q1, while in Q2, it achieved 2 targets and missed 1 target. So did SOurce reduce the total number of performance targets between Q1 and Q3? And if so, which specific targets were removed or were revised? And what informed the decision to reduce or adjust these targets, including whether this was due to budgetary constraints, capacity challenges, challenges to annual performance plan, or other management considerations? Can they please explain to us what made them to reduce the challenges, the targets? Honorable Chair, maybe I should just pause here.
Okay, thank you,
Yes, allow me
Honorable
to pause.
Managa.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Managa. Honorable Mkiza.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. I would also like to welcome the presentation from South African Weather Services. I've got a few questions to ask as clarity-seeking questions regarding the indicator integrity. South African Weather Services repeatedly cites erroneous capturing of indicator descriptions for greenhouse gas data availability in both Q1 and Q2. My question is, who approved these indicators in the APP, and what consequence management has followed for this material planning failure? South African Services also proposed to recalculate Q1 and Q2 performance at year end after recorrecting indicators. My question also is, how can Parliament exercise effective quarterly oversight if performance or results are subject to retrospective adjustment? Thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Mkiza. Honorable Mukwena.
Thank you very much, Chair. And let me join my colleague by welcoming the presentation from South African Weather Services. Chair, it is quite disappointing that in Q1, against the target of 750 people living in a vulnerable areas that were meant to be reached through the South African Weather Services Awareness Program, nothing has been executed. Noting that the reason was due to a lack of funds, my question is whether there were no entities that the organization can partner with to get the work off the ground. What was done in Q2 that couldn't be done in Q1, seeing that the target was reached in Q2? And again, what is the vacancy rate and what is inhibiting the filling of vacancies? How are you addressing the deficit of 37.54 million and other shortages that may be encountered in the future? Q1 saw inconsistent data replication due to the cyber attack. What specific cyber attack measures has been put in place to prevent future disruption? And how is the department ensuring the integrity and reliability of data moving forward? What is the total implication of rent value of the cyber? Sorry, Chair. Sorry.
Take your time, Honorable Mukwena.
Okay. I've got one more last question. Or can I come back again, Chair, after the honorable members have asked their question? Got one last question.
Okay, it's fine. Honorable Pilangulu, followed by Honorable Pitas. Honorable Pilangulu.
Thank you, Chairperson. Oh, Jesus Christ. Firstly, Chair, I would like to welcome the presentation. And I've got few questions. As I've already indicated, if I happen to be off, it means that wherever I'll be traveling doesn't have covered by network. But anyway, Chair, the first question goes like this. Several air quality stations were decommissioned due to theft and vandalism. What is the plan for relocating these stations so far to safer sites, and what security measures will be implemented to protect them? The second one, Chair, is that how will the department ensure that the decommissioning of stations do not negatively impact the availability and quality of air quality data? The unregulated commercial revenue and Q2. And that attitude.
Honorable Pilangulu, you keep on breaking. I understand that you've told, yes, you
maybe
keep on getting cut off.
I'll send the questions to the secretary to forward it to them. Okay. Thank you.
I do that, Honorable, because I understand that you are on oversight. No, it's noted. Honorable Peters.
Thank you, Chair, and let me obviously welcome the presentation as well from the department. With regards to public impact and service delivery, how are the service delivery failures, particularly delays in early warnings, climate data availability, as well as outreach to vulnerable communities being mitigated to ensure that ordinary citizens are not placed at increased risk while internal challenges are being resolved. Thank you, Chair. And other questions were covered by the previous members.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Peters. Honorable Manaka, I see your hand again.
Yes, thank you so much, Chair. Another issue is on Program 2, Research and Innovation. It reflects no performance targets in both Quarter 1 and Quarter 2. Why were no targets set under this program despite the increasing frequency and intensity of extreme weather events driven by climate change? And how does the entity intend, Honorable Chair, to innovate and strengthen scientific capacity without measurable research and innovation outputs? And by when will clear funded and measurable targets be introduced under this program too? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Managa. Honorable Mukwena.
Thank you, Chair. What is the total implication in rent value of the cyber incident that transpired? And how are you addressing it while ensuring that you build stronger systems that won't be easy to penetrate from a cyber security point of view? And then the availability of greenhouse gas data was low in both Quarter 1 and Quarter 2. What specific steps are being taken to ensure the replenishment of ozone stock and the return of Dobson spectrophotometers to normal operation? And what is the timeline of this action? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mukwena. I have noted that Honorable Pelangulu said she's going to send the question to the Secretary, but from my side, some of the questions have been covered by my colleagues, but I also want to raise the issue of the underspending. Mine will be based on the underspending on compensation of employees due to vacancies and the delayed implementation of annual salary adjustment. I want to check with source what are the reasons for not implementing the salary adjustment promptly, and when was the adjustment made, if it was done. And also, again, I think the issue of equality was raised, but I want to also put emphasis on this air quality stations, the target that was not met, and it has been generally difficult to attain. And during the review period, it was only partially achieved due to the disconnection of some stations. Where are the reporting stations situated, if they can share that with us, and how many are awaiting relocation? Also, at what stage is the relocation of stations not currently reporting data? If they can tell us at what stage is the relocation of those stations that are not reporting data. Kilega, did you receive the questions from Honorable Belangulu before I give to the CEO?
Not yet, Chair.
Okay, let's move. CE and the CFO, can you respond to the questions?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I will respond and then I'll ask some of my executive colleagues that are in the meeting to also assist with some of the responses, if that's okay with you, Chair. So, Chair, starting with Honorable Manaka, definitely the issue of underspending is a major issue for us as well, because we run the risk of that budget not being made available. But there are various factors that contribute to underspending in some instances. We obviously take all reasonable measures to ensure that we do spend whatever budget it is that we are granted, but there are sometimes variables that are not within our control. For example, we might send out a tender where we get no response, and we then sitting with that budget that should have been spent, but as a result of for example, no tenders that fit the bill, we could not spend that money. Alternatively, we have tenders that don't meet the requirements, and there's a duty on us to make sure that we spend taxpayers' monies responsibly as well. So we need to be very cautious that we meet all the regulatory supply chain management requirements as well when spending that money. Then also, in terms of the program 4 and the non-achievement of targets there, related to specifically the issue around the revenue as well, the unregulated revenue and the greenhouse gas data. Also, one of the other members also raised that. So as far as our unregulated revenue goes, we are working, as I said, on those two big SOE contracts that will improve our revenue situation in the next 2 quarters. Those are fairly big, and there's been delays during that process as well, and it's not necessarily delays that are in source control in relation to finalizing those revenue generating contracts. As far as the greenhouse gas data goes, and one of the other honorable members also raised the issue around the greenhouse gas data. I think it's Honorable Mkhize. So just in relation to that target, we've been operating with that target, and we haven't had an issue with how the calculations were done previously. I think and I'll ask Mr. Mohape to maybe just confirm what I'm saying, because I don't want to say the wrong thing to Parliament. But the current Auditor General team had a problem with the indicator and how the calculations were done. So we've been doing it previously according to a methodology that was agreed, and everybody was happy with. So Honorable Mkhize, you're actually 100% correct that we need to have a target that you'd be able to exercise proper oversight over. This time around, we've taken an extra cautionary approach. We've also asked that our targets be looked at beforehand, and we've asked also the AG to have oversight over the targets and the calculations and so forth. So as far as this one goes, we'll be amending the target based on the outcome of the AG assessment in relation to the target. As I said, in our previous audits, we haven't had any concerns around it, but we are now aligned with the current AG team and will then report based on this new methodology of calculation. And I'll ask Mr. Mohape, we have missed out, to just fill in the gaps. As far as Honorable Mokoena, there were issues internally in relation to us meeting that first quarter target. However, I want to assure the committee that from a perspective of how and how many people we actually reach, we try as far as possible to, as the honorable member suggested, also partner with others. So a lot of our outreach initiatives are in fact where we look at other entities and then almost piggyback on their functions to make sure that we get the maximum amount of exposure. There are budgetary constraints and also human capacity constraints in that regard. So we try as far as we can within our available resources to ensure that we get the maximum exposure when it comes to these kind of outreach programs. We also, I must mention to the honorable member, utilize foreign funding. And I need to mention the WISER program that made funds available for outreach for us. And we utilize those funds quite effectively to ensure that we have outreach. And just to put the honourable member at ease, we've resolved the issues in the second quarter, and our overall target for the first and second quarters has actually been met. And however, it hasn't impacted on our general ability to issue the early warnings, as was indicated by the minister when he in his opening remarks. So, from the perspective of us being able to issue our early warning early warnings, we were able to do those quite effectively and efficiently, and the Limpopo and Mpumalanga floods just gave credence to that statement as well. In terms of the number of vacancies, we have to be very, very careful that we look at the budget in its overall context. Yes, we do have some vacancies that need to be funded. That are funded that have not yet been filled. We are in process in terms of filling vacancies, and there's no. It's in our interest to ensure that all our specifically our critical vacancies are filled as soon as possible, and there are processes in that regard. I will ask our corporate services executive to just give a sense of how many vacancies we dealt with in the first and second quarters, and how many we filled to date, so that we can show that we are in fact trying to fill the vacancies as far as possible. As for the budget in relation to the vacancies, as I said, we have to look at the overall spend. The acting CFOs mentioned that we had an initial deficit in the first quarter, and that deficit has increased. He's also mentioned that there are reasons for that deficit in terms of the grant allocation and so forth. We obviously would be attempting to save money as far as possible in terms of our revenue turnaround strategy, increasing our outputs in terms of trying to get additional commercial revenue, and generally making sure that our austerity measures help us to stay within budget. But I must add, Chair and honourable members, it's becoming increasingly difficult for us to do that, especially in light of the rising costs, whether it's infrastructure for observations or ICT. And I just heard recently that the prices of the Dell computers and so forth would be going up considerably again. So these are all issues that we need to take into account when we talk about budget, and also the fact that we've had these budget cuts across the MTEF and they impact our general functionality. But we are doing everything in our power to make sure that with the limited resources we do have, we try and improve the use of our revenue and increase our revenue as such. In terms of the air quality stations to be relocated, Honourable Bilankulu, yes, we are preferably trying to get them into sites that are secure and sites where they won't be vandalized or damaged. I'm going to ask our executive that's currently overseeing the air quality matters, excuse me, to see if he has an on-hand indication of the number of sites and what's being done in relation to them. If not, Chair, I would request that wherever my executives cannot answer, that we will do a written response to the specific question. If we're unable to answer in this meeting, we will then provide a specific and detailed response to the question to the committee shortly after the meeting. Also, the issue around the availability of the air quality data, and how it will be impacted, I'll ask Dr. Mpepia to address that issue. As for the issue around, I think that last question, I think we lost Honourable Bilankulu, so I'm not sure. I assume we will be getting the written question. Honorable Peters, as far as delays in the early warnings, there have been no delays as far as those goes. SAWS has been able to address the early warning systems and ensure that our citizens are pre-warned. We also go a step further in terms of ensuring that as far as we can, we extend what's not necessarily within our mandate to ensure that we reach as many people as possible. So some of the initiatives that we take in relation to making communities aware and so forth, those awareness sessions are also an extension of that mandate issue. So in terms of the outreach to communities, we do that in order to, as an add-on, to educate communities to make sure that they understand how our early warning systems work and so forth. But in relation to the early warnings themselves, there hasn't been an issue as far as the outreach goes, because they're separate issues. The one is whether or not we can get these early warnings out to the relevant stakeholders as soon as possible. And then also so that they can actually use that information to ensure that they take proactive action, as has happened at the Kruger, in terms of mitigating potential harm to lives and livelihoods, and that has been able to happen. So in terms of our data integrity as well, Honorable Peters, we are also ensuring that we do everything possible in relation to ensuring that we do have data integrity. And I also wanted to, in that note, say that there's been several initiatives that we've taken to make sure that our data integrity is not compromised going forward. And some of those lessons were lessons hard learned during the cyber attack. So from a backup perspective, we are looking, or we have implemented various options in terms of backups, what they call snapshot backups, as well as archiving backups in terms of tapes and so forth. And there's been a range of security measures, first of all, that we've put in place to prevent a future cyber attack, but then also to make sure that there's resilience built into the system. So we've been looking at replicating our data at our regional offices and making sure that we have backups at the regional offices, and also trying to make sure that our DR at our failover site is also up and running. We've done a fair amount of initiatives in terms of that, and I think currently we are also going to be doing penetration testing just to test the integrity of the systems that we've brought up again. I think then Honorable Mokoena, I think it was Honorable Mokoena, forgive me if it wasn't, raised the issue around scientific capacity and what's happening in that space. So from that perspective as well, there are in fact targets, and the targets that are marked in blue on our presentation. So the target is actually an annual target, and that's why it's not reported on a quarterly basis. If you look at the slide that talks to this, there were in fact the annual target talks to 30 research studies that are conducted to generate scientific insights and related sciences, science products as well. So there were 15 that were realized as at the end of Q2. And then from that program as well, there's new and enhanced products that they look at, and the annual target is 3 of those products for the year. As at Q2, they've managed to do 4 prototypes of those products and services, and I'll ask once again Dr. Mpepe if there's anything that he wants to add in terms of that. So there are targets. It's just that they're not quarterly targets. They are an annual target. So they are clear and they are measurable in terms of the outputs, Honorable Member. Then the total RAND value of the cyber attack, we'd have to calculate that. I think at last count, just from an ICT perspective and additional servers, and that if my recollection serves me correctly, but I stand to be corrected, we had to put in a fair amount of infrastructure and so forth, but that was about 6 million. And I can't remember offhand what the revenue impact was. So I would ask that instead of me giving the incorrect information, we give a written response to that question around the total RAND value, because there are different elements to that calculation. It would be what we had spent in terms of recovery and additional infrastructure, as well as the amounts that we had done in terms of strengthening our systems internally, and also what we had spent on paying service providers. So, Chair, I would request that on that item, we give a response to the Honourable Member. The member also raised issues around what we had done to strengthen our resilience and our general ICT vulnerability. So there's a whole range of issues that we have undertaken, starting from endpoint protection on our laptops. We've done multi-factor authorization. As I said, our backups, we are ensuring that there are multiple backups and systems available. We're looking at our areas of vulnerability and ensuring that from that perspective, on a monthly basis, we're getting reports that talk to things like patch management and so forth, and that those vulnerability assessments are acted upon. So there's a range of initiatives, Chair, that we are taking to make sure that there isn't another cyber attack, and if there is one, that we would be able to, in a relatively short space of time, excuse me, Chair, get our operations back up to speed. As far as the greenhouse gas data goes, I will ask Dr. Mpepe, but my last recollection was that we were okay. We had procured sufficient ozone sondes, but I stand to correction, and Dr. Mpepe will just assist me with that. As far as the Dobson spectrophotometers are concerned, that calibration process has been completed and the machines are back in place, and you will see the second quarter results reflect improved performance in relation to whatever concerns we had in the first quarter as far as our greenhouse gas data is concerned. However, that was one of the areas where we didn't meet the target yet. So I'll ask Dr. Mpepe to just address that issue in relation to the greenhouse gas. But I did mention also the issues around the calculations and how we would look at that going forward. I mentioned also the issue around the air quality stations and the relocation, and if Doc's got that information, he can make it available. Alternatively, let me then stop here, Chair. I'll hand over to Ms. Decker first to just talk to the vacancy issue. Sorry, Mr. Mohapi first, just to see whether I've covered all the issues. Then second, in relation to the indicator. Then secondly, to Ms. Decker in relation to the vacancies. And then Dr. Mpepe in relation to the science issues and the air quality issues. With your permission, Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abada. In that order, Mr. Mohapi, you're the first one, then you'll be followed by others. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good afternoon to yourself and to the members. In relation to the specific indicator around the greenhouse gases, We did correct the indicated description and went through a process of submitting the reviews to the annual performance plan to the minister for approval, and we've retabled this revised indicated description. And it is not to mislead the committee in its oversight role, where we're going to recalculate at the end of the quarter. It is a correction of what was incorrect, so that the information that we furnish to the AG at the end of the financial year is complete and is accurate. And in that sense, we would be able to have that indicator audited, in fairly in a good way. Member Managa, you are correct. There is a reduction in the number of targets in program 4 between quarters 1 and quarter 2. However, that reduction is due to the fact that one of the indicators is an annual target that we achieved in the first quarter. And this one relates to our triple BEE level. And in the presentations, you would see that in the first quarter, when we reported the performance, we had achieved a level 6. However, the verification agency in the month of September, I think, came back with a revised scoring, and we have now achieved the level 4 rating that we had targeted for that indicator. So similarly to the greenhouse gases one, at the end of the financial year, we will correct what we had stated in the first quarter and reflect it as an achievement. Member Bilangulu asked about the relocation plan of our equity stations and the number that we have. We currently have 10 stations since decommissioning 5. And these 10 stations that are operational, they are reporting currently to the South African Air Quality Information System, SAQIS. And these 10 stations are spread across the 3 priority areas of the Vaal, the Highveld, as well as the Waterberg Bujanale. And as per our plan to relocate these stations, as we concluded the third quarter, one of our stations in Witbank was being engaged with the Department of Health, who owns the land that we want to relocate the station to, and these engagements are still ongoing. As far as the Emira station is concerned, we were going to conclude the commissioning of the station in January, and we should see that station reporting once again on the SAQIS, as well as in our overall number of stations that we're reporting on a quarterly. Similarly, with the Sharpeville and Deep Loop stations, we've identified the suitable sites to relocate these stations. However, these engagements with the landowners are still ongoing, and we are negotiating what would be best for all parties in terms of a nominal fee for rental to house and host these stations. Member Mokoena, around the non-achievement of that program 4 indicator around, going out to vulnerable communities and spreading our life-saving messages. Indeed, we did not achieve in the first quarter. And CE mentioned that there are other ways where we implement to get that reach the communities out there by partnering with others, as you mentioned, member. But this indicator specifically is around our radio program that we are broadcasting to a number of stations, 8 to 10 stations simultaneously in those areas that we would have identified as vulnerable to the impacts of the weather and climate, or how we have projected the season that's coming up ahead is going to affect these communities. And what we have done is to have these broadcasts done in the languages in those areas where we broadcast into. And this is to ensure that we and the communities understand each other, and they use this information to mitigate against any undesired impacts of what they are facing there. Thank you, Chairperson. CE, I think I've covered the areas where I thought I could add. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mogapi. I think the second one is Ms. Decker.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. Chair, there's two questions that I would like to respond to. The first one from Honourable Kwena on the vacancy rate. As at the 31st of January, Chair, our vacancy rate was 8.1%. We had, but not all these positions are funded positions at this stage. Chair, for the year, we finalized recruitment for 41 positions, but we also had to deal with 22 terminations, of which 11 of those were resignations. The others were unfortunate deaths, retirements, and areas where contracts came to an end. Chair, of the 41 positions we filled, 12 of those were where internal candidates were successful in achieving higher level positions, and 8 of those were contract positions. So we are constantly recruiting, and we report on the recruitment timelines also to our board. Chair, so I hope that addresses Ms. Mkwena's question. Chair, and then your question around the reasons for not implementing salary adjustments. Chair, we have 3 unions that we negotiate with in terms of salary adjustments. 2 of those unions accepted the salary offer that we put on the table, and we implemented the salary adjustments for those unions in September. 1 union was, however, not happy. They demanded things like a 24 million once-off payment, as well as increases varying from 7.5% to 10%. Chair, our offer, and based on affordability, could only align with the DPSA offer of 5.5%. However, in January, so we went through a CCMA process, Chair, but in January, that union did come back and say that they are willing to accept the offer that we initially made. So we implemented those salary increases in January, before the 15th of January. And the CCMA process stopped, Chair, but we are also working on ensuring that the negotiations with the unions can start a lot earlier this year, so that we try and prevent this late payments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Decker. Mr. Mpapia.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chairperson. I think some of the questions my colleague Dithuso did, but I'll just add on to the question regarding the air quality. I think there was a question that says, what are we going to do with regards to the data gaps? Are there any interventions? Yes, there are. We're currently working with a private organization just to help us in providing some of the monitoring data into the sequence. And again, we are also embarking on a project that looks into the low-cost census, so as to complement the monitoring gaps through partnerships from funds. I mean, we do get, we've applied for funders to help us in bringing the low-cost census into our monitoring network. So those are the two, some of the 2 interventions that we have regarding to filling up the data gaps. I think the Tuesday did respond to the relocation of all the sites, and then there was also a question around from Mankwena, not remember, around the ozone zones that stock has since been replenished, and starting from Q2, the ozone zones we were reporting, and as a result, we were even that increased the data availability of the global atmospheric patch. I think with regard to the Doppler instrument, the SU has touched on that by saying that the instrument that time went overseen for intercomparison, so it was the so-called. With regard to, I think also this one, the CEO did touch base on, but then I'll just expand further on the science part that the greenhouse gas data availability as reflected there, it's not by the quarter, it's an annual target. So that's why you are not seeing anything in Q1 and Q2. And with regards to the number of research, or you ask about innovation, I think the innovation is being captured under the second part where we're talking about new or enhanced climate and non-climate specific solution. on an annual basis, we do look into the sort of innovation that we can do to improve our value proposition or our services. For instance, we will look into coming up with a radar-based significance rainfall alert, which try to complement some of the gaps regarding our radar network, and that assist us in the early warning also. And maybe we'll also have a project that looks into enhancement of satellites nowcasting system. That is something that also assists us in closing some of the gaps that we have in our data space area. And those are automatically used or immediately used by our forecasters and for various stakeholders. I think I've responded to some of those questions that you might have maybe touched up. And yeah, that's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mpepia. I think we are done with the questions and the responses, Mr. Abada. Let me check with the members if there's any follow-up question. Members, do you have follow-up questions? Chi, did you receive the questions from Honorable Bilangul?
No, Chair, she hasn't sent them.
Okay, no, it's fine. Maybe she is
I will
struggling
remind her
with network. Then we can send those questions to South African Weather Services. Yeah, when we receive them. I've noted that they have requested to respond in writing on the issue of the total rand value. I can't remember what was it, but and also the issue of equality and relocation. I'm also going to give them the 27th of February to respond to those questions that they've requested to respond to in writing. Mr. Abada, you are also given 22nd of February or 27th of February. Can you flash the agenda? I think we are done with our presentations.
Yes, Chair, we are done.
Oh,
Let's
okay.
start the agenda.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we are done. Let me then take this opportunity, honorable members, and the entities that they made their presentations, and also let me also thank the minister and the deputy ministers in absentia who have made time to come to the portfolio, our first portfolio committee for this year. Thank you very much for the attendance, and also to our colleagues from the department, DFFE, led by DG Shabalala, also in her absentia. Thank you very much, and also to our support staff for making it possible for this meeting to sit today. And I understand that some of our portfolio committee members, they are out on oversight because they are serving in other portfolio committees. And we would also like to apologize to those who took time to join our meeting for the glitches that our members might have experienced. It is due to the areas where they are visiting. With that, honorable members and colleagues, I now declare our meeting adjourned till we meet again on the 10th of February, physically in Cape Town. Honorable members, thank you very much, and the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Chair.
members.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Siyabonga kakhulu sihlalo.
Siyabonga, Mthabazeli.